What if I told you that everything you call sleep is perhaps humanity's greatest collective mistake? Not a simple rest, not a biological pause, but a secret portal that opens every time you close your eyes. Imagine for a moment that nights were never meant to rest the body alone, but to test the limits of your mind. What if you weren't just sleeping, but participating in an invisible experiment in which your soul connects with forces science has yet to measure? This provocation is not a modern invention. Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest geniuses who ever lived, claimed that the human being is a fragile antenna, constantly traversed by cosmic vibrations. For him, night was not absence, but attunement. Sleep was not oblivion, but the deepest tuning the mind could achieve. Tesla saw life as a constantly interacting energy field, and if you thought dreaming was just the result of a tired brain, he'd tell you you're wrong. For him, dreaming is like capturing a frequency that's always been in the air, but which we rarely hear clearly. Have you ever wondered why you wake up with fragments of memories that seem to belong nowhere in this life? Why do you feel intense emotions when confronted by faces you've never seen? Or why do you wake up with tears for no apparent reason? Perhaps it's because at night you're not just resting but touching dimensions that wakefulness cannot reach. The first tension arises precisely here. If this is true, why do most people continue to believe that sleep is nothing more than an automatic shutdown? Tesla's answer would be straightforward. Because we live immersed in noise. The noise of worries, the noise of repeated desires, the noise of distractions. This noise prevents us from hearing the greater music that vibrates around us. But there's a second, even more disturbing provocation. If sleep is a portal, what exactly lies on the other side? Is it merely a reflection of our memories? Is the unconscious reorganizing memories? Or is it a silent dialogue with something infinitely greater? Tesla had no problem mixing science and spirituality, because for him there was no division. The entire universe was made of vibrations, frequencies, and energy. And if everything vibrates, everything communicates. Human beings don't create from nothing, they merely tune in. This is how he described many of his own ideas, not as inventions, but as revelations. Ideas born not from calculations, but from altered states of perception. Isn't it curious to think that perhaps humanity's greatest advances arose from minds that dared to listen to what reached them in the silence of the night? Have you ever noticed how some dreams seem trivial, repeating details of everyday life, while others carry an almost unbearable intensity, as if they were messages from another plane? Tesla believed this difference is no coincidence. There are nights when we are better attuned, like finely tuned antennas, and then the message comes through clearly. Other times we receive only distorted echoes, scattered fragments of something that seemed grand. This is why many ancient traditions developed bedtime rituals, prayers, symbols, breathing, chants. This wasn't superstition, but a primitive attempt to align the mind with the right frequency. Tesla looked at this and saw echoes of forgotten knowledge, a vibrational wisdom that modernity has disregarded. He understood that behind every superstition was an attempt to deal with forces that don't disappear just because we don't know how to measure them. But if sleep is a door, do we have the courage to consciously cross it? Imagine going to bed tonight and instead of seeing sleep as rest, perceiving it as a spiritual experiment. Tesla would say this is the most powerful moment of your existence, the instant when the body relaxes, but the mind still retains a spark of consciousness. In this interval, you can choose simply to drift off or to enter into dialogue with life itself. He believed that what we think as we fall asleep shapes not only our dreams, but also the next day. It's like tuning an instrument before a concert. You can choose to play harmony, or you can lose yourself in the noise. This is a micro-conflict we all experience without realizing it. How often do we surrender to sleep with fear, anger, or anxiety? And how many times do we wake up the next day carrying the weight of these same feelings, as if the body had slept, but the soul had spent the night in battle? Tesla saw this as an opportunity. If nighttime is already inevitable, why not use it as a laboratory? Why not make it a space for conscious experimentation? Magnetism, for him, was the invisible bridge that made this laboratory clearer. But we haven't reached that key yet. For now, it's enough to realize that sleep was never just sleep. It's participation in something greater. It's the daily chance to connect with dimensions that wakefulness cannot access. Is this idea scary? Perhaps. Because if we accept it, we'll have to admit that we spend a third of our lives ignoring the greatest source of wisdom that exists. we'll have to admit that every night we despise is a closed door to transformation. What if you could actually wake up different? Not just rested, but transformed? What if your dreams weren't just meaningless stories, but coded symbols? Messages projected in a language the rational intellect can't translate. Tesla believed that the language of the universe is not literal, but symbolic. It's made of numbers, shapes, and vibrations. That's why dreams seem enigmatic. They don't speak in words, but in codes. It's up to us to learn how to interpret them. And if we don't interpret them, it's not because there's no message, but because we haven't yet learned the language in which it's written. Some say dreams are absurd, but ask yourself, what's more absurd? Believing that we spend every night living disconnected stories without any purpose, or accepting that perhaps we are participating in a dialogue with something greater than ourselves. Tesla had no doubts. For him, nothing was by chance. If there is vibration, there is intention. There is a symbol, there is a message. The problem is that we get used to not listening. Throughout history, we prefer to believe that sleep is merely biology because it gives us security. It's easier to treat the night as rest than to accept it as initiation. It's easier to believe in oblivion than in responsibility, because if sleep is a portal, each of us is called to cross it, and not everyone is ready to face what they may find on the other side. Perhaps this is why so many people fear their own dreams. They wake in the middle of the night with the feeling that something has called their name, sense presences in empty rooms, or carry memories that seem to come from other lives. For Tesla, this wasn't delirium, but a symptom of a mind attuning to the invisible. Fear, for him, was simply a natural reaction to the unknown. After all, what we call darkness is nothing more than the absence of light, and what we call mystery is nothing more than science not yet understood. What will you do with this possibility? Will you continue to treat sleep as a banal act, a routine that takes up hours of your life without any greater meaning? Or will you dare to see it as a spiritual technology that we all have access to, but almost no one learns to use? Tesla believed that the future of humanity would depend not only on machines, but on the ability to understand the invisible forces that surround us. He said that anyone who dared enter this territory should be prepared, because there they would encounter not only revelations, but also their own shadows. Perhaps this is why sleep is still seen as a refuge, not a risk. But what greater risk could there be than spending your entire life ignoring a portal that opens before you every night? If every night is a school, how many lessons have you missed? If every dream is a letter, how many messages have you failed to read? If every symbol is a code, how many secrets have you let slip? Tesla would say that humanity's greatest tragedy is not darkness, but the refusal to turn on the light. And perhaps this light lies not in bulbs or wires, but in the courage to look within when the outside world falls silent. The true conflict lies not in knowing whether sleep is real or an illusion, but in deciding whether you will continue sleeping as always, or whether you will dare to sleep as one who knows that night is the beginning of revelation. What if your dreams weren't confusing because they're absurd, but because you don't yet know how to hear what they're trying to tell you? Imagine for a moment that all the information is available, clear and unambiguous, but when it reaches you, it's distorted, fragmented, and incomplete. It's as if a perfect melody were permeated by static to the point where the ear only recognizes fragments. Nikola Tesla believed that this is precisely the human condition, receptors surrounded by noise. It's not the signal that fails, it's our mind that can't interpret it without distortion. The dream itself is coherent. The problem is our ability to remember and translate. And here arises the second layer of this enigma. If the message is real, who is speaking to us, and why can't we clearly retain what we hear during the night? Tesla saw the mind as a poorly tuned antenna. He said that cosmic vibrations are always present, but that our brain, too busy with worries and repetitions, lacks sufficient silence to capture the message clearly. Think about your day. How often do you find yourself repeating the same thoughts? The fear of not having money, the memory of a conversation left unresolved, anxiety about the future. These thoughts are like interference that blocks the finest signal. And when you lie down, it's not silence that arrives, but the echo of all this noise. This is why so many dreams seem chaotic. They are merely reflections of a saturated mind trying to process what it has captured amidst the confusion. Imagine an old radio, You turn the knob and hear music, but it's full of noise. The station is there, broadcasting clearly, but your tuning doesn't reach the exact frequency. What Tesla was saying is that the human mind works the same way. Dreams aren't disordered inventions. They are transmissions, but rarely tuned to the purity of the original frequency. The noise is within us, and the more we carry worries, the more distorted the message becomes. Think of a typical night. You arrive home tired, eat dinner in a hurry, turn on the television, or scroll through your phone until your eyes grow heavy. When you turn it off, you don't realize that all that excitement has been etched in your mind as static. Then, throughout the night, your dreams come fragmented. Confusing images, jumbled people, unreal places. Not because there wasn't a message, but because it was muffled. Now imagine another scenario. You lie down in silence, breathe deeply, let your thoughts settle, and perhaps even give thanks for the day. In this state, your mind reduces the noise. And what happens? Often, the dream becomes clearer, more symbolic, more coherent. The difference isn't in the universe, but in you. Tesla studied magnetism not only as a physical force, but as an invisible language. He believed that the Earth's magnetic field doesn't just move compass needles, but also organizes and amplifies vibrations. When two frequencies meet in harmony, the invisible becomes audible. It's as if magnetism were a mediator between worlds. And this raises a provocation. If magnetism can align external frequencies, can it also purify the reception of the human mind? Could a simple magnetic field reduce the noise we carry and allow dreams to reveal clearer messages? It's not hard to imagine. Think about your own life. How many times have you woken with the feeling that the dream had something important to say, only to have it vanish like smoke? How many times have only a detail, a word, a face, a fragment remained? Wouldn't it be strange if the universe spent entire nights trying to communicate with you? You only received incomplete fragments. Tesla said that clarity is lost, not in the sender, but in the receiver. It's like trying to read a book with wet pages. The story exists but dissolves before your eyes. This reflection may seem far-fetched, but consider everyday situations. Have you ever noticed how a simple emotional state changes the tone of your dreams? When you sleep anxious, it's common to wake up with nightmares. When you sleep peacefully, you often wake up inspired. It's almost inevitable. What we bring to sleep shapes what we receive during it. Tesla pointed out precisely this. He said that noise is not just external, but internal. It's not just the waves of the city or the stimuli of the environment, but our own thoughts that act as barriers. Here, an inevitable micro-conflict arises. If everything depends on the purity of the mind, are we condemned to dream fragments? Or can we learn to clear the channel and receive clearly? Tesla wasn't afraid of this question. For him, magnetism was one way. But before reaching that answer, we must face the truth. Most of us live in constant interference. Imagine trying to talk to someone important in the middle of a crowded stadium. You see their mouth moving, sense their intention, but don't understand the words. This is the common dream experience. We know there's a communication. We feel it matters, but we wake up with only the echo. And when we realize this, uneasiness arises. If we can sense the importance of what we don't understand, what would happen if we finally understood the entire message? Tesla believed this would be not just an individual leap, but a collective one. Because if every human being began to interpret their dreams as decoded messages, all of humanity could advance as never before. He saw noise as the main barrier to this leap, a barrier created not by nature, but by the overstimulation of modern life. And here lies an inevitable clash. If civilization itself is a source of noise, are we increasingly far from hearing what matters? Could it be that our technology, instead of expanding consciousness, is muffling the signal? Have you ever wondered why children tend to have such intense dreams and remember them so easily? Perhaps because they're not yet saturated with worries. The noise hasn't yet dominated the mind's antenna. They hear more than we do because they haven't yet learned to block it out. But over time, we fill the space with fears, desires, and obligations. The channel becomes more polluted, to the point where we no longer remember our dreams or treat them as nonsense. Tesla is said to have said that this loss isn't natural, but the result of an increasingly chaotic life. What to do then? Are we destined to forget the essential? Perhaps not. Perhaps the first step is to approach sleep not as passivity, but as practice. Reducing noise isn't about eliminating the world, but learning to adjust your inner gaze. Tesla said the problem was never the signal, but the ability to interpret. And this opens a new horizon. If you learn to silence your mind before sleep, you might begin to hear more clearly what has always been being transmitted. But there's a disturbing surprise behind this idea. If the signal is real and constant, then even if you don't understand it, it continues to act on you. The dream isn't lost just because it's not remembered. It acts deep within, like an undercurrent. You might wake up feeling different without knowing why. It might carry strange emotions, inexplicable longings, sudden inspirations. The invisible works silently, even when you ignore it. And this raises an inevitable question. What have you already lost by not learning to listen? How many answers could have been yours if you had heeded the message? Tesla saw magnetism as a perfect metaphor for this process, an invisible field, ever present, yet ignored until a compass needle moves and reveals its existence. He saw sleep as this needle, proof that invisible forces pass through us every night. And if we accept this view, then each dream fragment is not a mistake, but a clue. Each fragment is a part of a larger message. The conflict lies within us. Will we accept the fragments as if they were the whole, or will we have the courage to seek the whole? This is Tesla's provocation. The universe isn't silent. You're just too distracted to hear. And perhaps the greatest noise doesn't come from outside, but from within. The mind doesn't stop, the heart doesn't rest, and so the message is lost. But what if there were a way to transform the night into clarity? What if it were possible to wake up not with fragments, but with powerful symbols that guide your life? This possibility exists, and it is at this point that magnetism will begin to reveal itself not as a distant theory, but as the key that can change the way you dream, think, and live. What if the universe weren't a cold machine, but a living mind pulsating in every atom? Nikola Tesla believed that everything that exists vibrates as part of a greater intelligence. For him, reality wasn't just matter organized into mathematical formulas, but a cosmic symphony where each human being is a note, each thought a chord, and each dream a melody revealing fragments of an invisible composition. When you sleep, you don't withdraw from the world, but rather immerse yourself in this symphony. Sleep isn't about detachment, it's about participation. It's at this point that Tesla's great revelation emerges. We are not isolated creators, but rather recipients of a consciousness that transcends us. What if what you call imagination weren't just yours, but an echo of this universal mind? This idea seems far-fetched until you consider the repetition of symbols throughout human history. From ancient times to the present day, dreams are filled with the same images. Rivers, fire, snakes, ladders, doors, lights. Why do people who have never met dream the same symbols? Tesla saw this as evidence of a universal language, a kind of vibrational code we all pick up when we sleep. But what would it mean if we were all, night after night, accessing the same invisible library? Would your nocturnal experience be yours alone, or shared with billions of other human antennas? Stop for a moment and ask yourself, have you ever dreamed of something that seemed to belong to another time or place, as if it were a memory of a life you never lived? How can these images be explained, if not by a larger network, a shared consciousness that records everything? For Tesla, the collective, unconscious described by Jung was not just a metaphor, but a natural effect of a vibrational field that unites all beings. It's possible that when you sleep, you're not just reviewing your day, but walking through the corridors of this living library, where memories, symbols, and visions remain suspended, waiting for someone to decipher them. What if what you see in your dream wasn't an invention, but a memory of something that has always existed? This notion transforms what we understand as creativity. When an artist paints something new, or a scientist discovers an unexpected solution, are they creating or simply capturing available frequencies? Tesla said, "I have invented nothing. I have merely captured what was already in the universe." This phrase should unsettle us. If everything already exists in a vibrational state, then every dream can be a window into this infinite storehouse of ideas. The question isn't whether you dream, but whether you learn to interpret. How many discoveries, projects, and even cures have passed through your mind while you slept, only to be lost the next morning because they were dismissed as meaningless illusions? Have you ever woken up feeling like you've lived an entire life in a few hours of sleep? This experience, common to thousands of people, indicates that dream time doesn't obey the same laws as waking time. Tesla believed that the universal field isn't bound by linear time. When we dream, we can experience pasts and futures as if they were simultaneous. This would explain why so many report premonitory dreams or memories of something that hasn't yet happened. If the universal field contains all possibilities, wouldn't it be natural for us to access fragments of this whole when we disconnect from rational logic? Now imagine the impact this has on your daily life. You're facing an important decision, something that profoundly affects your life. You sleep worried, but during the night you dream about a seemingly unrelated situation. A broken bridge, a blocked road, a boat that won't move. When you wake up, you feel like it was a warning. What if it really was? What if the dream wasn't about boats or bridges, but about your own choice? How many times have you received messages like this and chosen to ignore them because it seemed like just a dream? What if each dismissal was a wasted opportunity to align your life with the universal mind? Tesla believed the ancients knew this connection. Sleep temples in Greece, dream rituals among shamans, vision incubation practices in Egyptian civilizations, all sought the same thing, to hear the invisible at night. But over the centuries, we lost this respect for the nocturnal mystery. Modernity has transformed sleep into biology and dreams into distractions. What if this reductionist view is humanity's greatest spiritual loss? Perhaps that's why so many today feel disconnected, even surrounded by technology. It's not a lack of information, it's a lack of connection. Think about those nights when you feel watched, as if a silent presence shared the room. You might have dismissed it as imagination, but Tesla wouldn't have. For him, the universal mind isn't a concept. It's a real presence that interacts with us when the body relaxes. What would you do if you accepted that you're not alone when you dream? Would you have the courage to listen? Or would you prefer to keep calling it a coincidence rather than face the weight of the revelation? Here, a fundamental pattern break emerges. What if dreams weren't just messages for you, but also through you? Imagine that every time you dream, you not only receive symbols but also transmit frequencies into the universal field. In this case, your fears, hopes, and visions become part of what someone else can perceive. Have you ever considered that what you dream can influence strangers in other parts of the world? That you are also a sender, not just a receiver? If this is true, then the responsibility grows. What happens to a humanity that goes to sleep in collective fear, collective anxiety, and collective rage? Will the universal field not become contaminated, reproducing nightmares on a planetary scale? Tesla warned that energy is neutral, but our use of it defines its quality. What if today's world reflects shared nightmares more than luminous dreams? This provocation forces us to look within. Do you sleep as a victim of noise or as a conscious participant in a cosmic dialogue? Imagine for a moment that all wars, inventions, and social transformations were also conceived overnight, in thousands of minds connected to the same field. It wouldn't be absurd to think that great historical changes are the fruit of shared dreams, encoded in symbols that later manifest themselves in concrete actions. If each individual is a cell in a larger organism, then collective dreams function like the nerve impulses that coordinate the human body. Have you ever considered that your life is not just yours, but an expression of a greater mind that uses you as an instrument? This thought can be frightening but also liberating, because it means we are not lost in an indifferent universe, but integrated into a living intelligence. It means that every dream, even the strangest, has value. It means that nothing is banal when we understand that everything participates in a greater order. But the question remains, are you willing to decipher the code, or will you continue living among fragments? Tesla would say there is no such thing as coincidence. The unfamiliar face you love in a dream, the place you visit without ever having been, the feeling of having already experienced a scene are echoes of a shared reality. Conflict arises when we try to reduce everything to chemical processes in the brain. Of course, there are biological reactions, but does that explain the intensity, the symbolic coherence, the universality of dreams? Aren't we closing our eyes to the obvious because we're afraid to admit that we're participating in something much larger than we can control? Now, imagine waking up tomorrow with the conviction that dreaming is not fantasy, but participation in a universal mind. What would change? Would you treat your dreams as the garbage of consciousness, or as encrypted letters that need to be read? Would you record every symbol, every emotion, searching for patterns? Or would you continue to believe there is nothing there? What changes is not the dream, but your decision to pay attention. What if the key to understanding the universe lay not in telescopes or particle accelerators, but in the way you sleep? That would be the ultimate irony. Humanity spends billions observing distant stars while ignoring the portal that opens within our own minds every night. Tesla knew this. He saw the mind as an extension of the cosmos, and the cosmos as an extension of the mind. This symmetry is too simple to be accepted by a science that seeks complication. But perhaps the truth lies precisely in the simplicity we have forgotten. Isn't it uncomfortable to think that what you call your thoughts might not be yours? That ideas, emotions, and images are shared in a larger network? That you are more of a node than a source? This reflection may disturb the ego, but it brings relief to the soul. Because if we are collectively us, then we have never been alone. Dreams are proof that we belong to something that transcends individual biography. And the final provocation of this stage is inevitable. If every night you participate in a universal mind, why do you still insist on believing your dreams are irrelevant? Perhaps the answer lies in fear. The fear of discovering that life is much more than you control. The fear of admitting that even the silence of the night is a conversation. But fear was never an obstacle for Tesla. He walked precisely where others retreated. And perhaps this is the lesson he leaves us. Do not fear the invisible, fear ignoring it. Because when the universal mind speaks, the silence of those who do not hear is the greatest loss we can suffer. What if magnetism were much more than we imagine? Not just a physical force that moves compasses or keeps the earth shielded from the solar wind, but a secret language capable of organizing consciousness itself? Nikola Tesla believed exactly this. For him, magnetism was the invisible mediator between what we call physical reality and the subtle planes of existence. It's as if each magnetic field were a bridge, a thread connecting different dimensions, and our body, especially during sleep, were the antenna capable of traversing this thread. If this is true, then sleeping near a magnetic field is not just an insignificant detail, but an experience capable of transforming what you dream, feel, and even what you create upon waking. Modern science, while not accepting all the implications of Tesla's vision, has already confirmed some curious evidence. In 2004, Swiss researchers applied electromagnetic stimulation to specific areas of the brain and observed volunteers reporting out-of-body experiences, as if floating and seeing themselves from above. Other experiments have documented that magnetic fields can alter REM sleep, the phase in which the most vivid dreams occur. This means Tesla's intuition was no daydream. There is a direct relationship between magnetism and dreams, and the inevitable question is, how far can this relationship go? A curious fact helps broaden this reflection. Studies on solar activity show that during peak geomagnetic storms, millions of people report more nightmares, insomnia, or intense dreams. This is no coincidence. The Earth's magnetic field varies in intensity and directly influences the human nervous system. Now imagine this on a personal scale. If large variations in the Earth's field already alter our nights, what could a controlled and directed magnetic field do? Isn't it strange to think that we may be surrounded by a natural technology that we never learned to consciously use? Tesla spoke of this with fascination. He believed that magnetism could be used not only to move machines, but also to reorganize the human mind. In his writings, he mentioned how he would spend hours in states of silence, often with metallic objects around him, believing that the oscillating field helped clarify his reception. Some accounts suggest that his most revolutionary ideas emerged after long periods of seclusion, as if he had learned to enter the ideal state of attunement. Perhaps it wasn't just genius, but also the ability to harness an invisible force that most ignore. Have you ever considered that perhaps the nights you woke up with a clear idea, almost like a revelation, were not just the result of your brain, but of a momentary magnetic attunement? Imagine waking up with the solution to a problem that seemed impossible during the day. This has happened to countless scientists, artists, and inventors. Chemist Friedrich Kekulé dreamed of a snake biting its own tail, and from there emerged the structure of the benzene ring. Mendeleev claimed to have dreamed of the periodic table already organized. These examples are not legends, they are documented. What if they were all, in fact, experiments in aligning with the universal magnetic field, where symbols translate into concrete ideas? But here an inevitable conflict arises. If magnetism can organize and clarify, it can also intensify chaos. Tesla warned that energy is neutral, and its use depends on the inner state of the recipient. Imagine two people sleeping with the same magnetic field surrounding them. One falls asleep in gratitude, seeking clarity. The other carries anger, fear, and resentment. The field won't choose for them. It will merely amplify what already exists. For the first, the dream can be a portal to revelations. For the second, a plunge into intensified nightmares. This leads us to a provocation. Could it be that the worst nightmares are simply exaggerations of frequencies already carried within us? Recent data shows that over 60% of people report having had dreams so vivid that upon waking they believed they were real. Of these, a significant percentage describe feelings of presence, as if something or someone were in the room. Science usually explains this as sleep paralysis, but Tesla saw it differently. For him, in these moments, the barrier between planes becomes thinner, and magnetism acts as an amplifier of this passage. And here lies the uncomfortable question. What would you do if you accepted that you are not dreaming alone, that other presences can cross this same channel? Would you have the courage to listen? There are also impressive historical records. Ancient civilizations recognized, even without the language of modern science, the importance of magnetism. The Egyptians built stone chambers with a high iron and granite content, believing that sleeping there facilitated divine visions. Shamans from different cultures placed metals under their heads to attract messages from the spirit world. The Greeks had temples dedicated to sleep where they sought healing dreams. All of this, which today is seen as superstition, can be reinterpreted in light of Tesla's intuition. They were primitive attempts to use magnetism to open invisible channels of communication. Now, imagine the power of this knowledge applied to modern consciousness. What if hospitals used magnetic fields to help patients reorganize their unconscious during sleep? What if schools taught children to sleep intentionally, tuning into clarity instead of falling into mental noise? This would radically change the way we live. Tesla believed that the future of humanity would depend precisely on this kind of application, not just exploring external forces, but learning to reorganize the inner self with the same universal laws that govern the cosmos. But there's another point worth noting. If magnetism truly amplifies what we carry within, aren't sleepless nights, repetitive dreams, or collective nightmares also signs of a humanity living in vibrational disharmony? Imagine billions of people falling asleep with fear, anxiety, and anger. The field that unites everyone inevitably becomes more chaotic. Perhaps this is why social crises, wars, and catastrophes seem to repeat themselves like echoes. Couldn't it be that collective dreams, intensified by Earth's magnetism, are creating reflections that later materialize in our realities? This idea may seem extreme, but Tesla believed that everything is energy, and energy in mass creates mass effects. Have you ever wondered why so many people report more intense dreams on full moon nights? There's more to this than mere poetry. Studies show that Earth's electromagnetic field undergoes slight variations during this period, and our biology responds. Now consider the impact of much larger events, such as solar flares. If a single full moon night can change our dreams, what happens when the entire planet is bombarded by waves of cosmic energy? It's possible that during these moments, millions of people are connected to similar dreams, sharing symbols and emotions without even realizing it. Tesla didn't see this as fantasy, but as a natural law not yet understood. He believed that the Earth is a living organism, breathing through its magnetic field, and that we participate in this same rhythm. Sleeping would be like entering into the rhythm of this planetary breathing, and dreams would be the way to translate this vibration into human language. The big question is, are we ready to recognize that our dreams are part not only of our individual minds, but of the living field of the entire Earth? Here, a pattern break is necessary. What if magnetism wasn't just something that affects us, but something we also emit? Tesla suggested that every human thought creates a wave that propagates through space. If this is true, each night you not only receive frequencies, but also transmit them. This means that what you dream doesn't belong solely to you, but becomes part of a larger network. Aren't we also creators of frequencies that others will capture in their dreams? If so, then what you feel before sleep is not just personal, but collective. This point leads us to a practical reflection. What do you do before falling asleep? Turn on the television full of violent news? Scroll through your phone screen, absorbing anger and anxiety? Or do you silence yourself, breathe, and choose a peaceful thought? The choice seems small, but Tesla would say it's fundamental, because the magnetic field doesn't select for you. It merely amplifies, and by amplifying, it turns your inner state into a transmitter for the invisible network that connects billions of consciousnesses. The accounts of people who have slept with magnets near their heads are intriguing. Many report clearer dreams, repeated symbols, and the sensation of being in unfamiliar places, but always the same. Others report encountering people they've never seen before, but with whom they felt a deep connection. It's impossible to dismiss all of this as coincidence. When similar experiences recur across countries and cultures, something bigger is happening. And if we are truly discovering that magnetism is the key to unlocking forgotten doors, then perhaps we are just at the beginning of a quiet revolution. Tesla believed that this revolution would come not only from machines, but from the awakening of the human mind. He said that the greatest discovery of science would be to recognize that what we call spirituality is not superstition, but the application of invisible laws of nature. Magnetism would be one of these meeting points between science and spirit, and if we accept this, dreams cease to be nocturnal whims and become instruments of evolution. But are we ready to face this responsibility? Because if magnetism amplifies everything, it also amplifies our deepest fears. How many times have you woken up in the middle of a nightmare feeling suffocated, as if trapped in a maze with no way out? These dreams may simply be projections of inner states amplified by the night. What if the Earth's magnetism, instead of liberating us, often only intensifies what we already carry? This forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Are you willing to purify your mind so that your dreams are clarity instead of chaos? Tesla's narrative points to an inevitable fate. Humanity will have to learn to consciously deal with magnetism. Ignoring it does not eliminate its influence. On the contrary, it makes us unconscious victims of forces that could be allies. Every night we sleep without intention is a night we let the invisible field decide for itself what to amplify. But every night we sleep with clarity, intention, and calm, we can transform magnetism into a bridge to revelations. This is the choice before us: to continue seeing magnetism merely as a physical phenomenon, or to accept it as a secret language that permeates life and dreams. And the question that remains, echoing as a challenge, is simple and powerful. The next time you close your eyes, will you be just a passenger in the noise, or will you dare to be a conscious traveler in the invisible field that Tesla saw as the true key to the future? What if each night wasn't just a break between one day and the next, but a real chance to transform your life? Nikola Tesla believed that sleep was more than rest. It was an active experience, almost a science yet to be deciphered. He treated the silence of the night as an invisible laboratory, where the mind could interact with forces that during the day are hidden by excessive noise. For him, night wasn't an absence, but an opportunity, and every human being had access to this opportunity, even without realizing it. The key point lies in how we prepare ourselves, because sleep can be both a waste and a revelation. Imagine for a moment that every detail before bed is a key: the environment you create, the thoughts you carry, even the objects that surround you. Couldn't it be possible to program your sleep like you prepare an instrument before a concert? Tesla cultivated a deep respect for this process. He spent long periods of time in seclusion, in silence, often isolated, believing that the mind needs a clear space to capture subtle frequencies. He didn't see the act of lying down simply as a biological gesture, but as the beginning of a conscious experience. Today, science confirms that small practices radically change the quality of sleep: reducing light stimuli, turning off devices, reducing noise. These are modern recommendations that indirectly resonate with Tesla's intuition. Sleep begins before closing our eyes, and the magnetic field that surrounds us amplifies the very state in which we fall asleep. This is the first key: sleeping with intention. Have you ever tried lying down with a clear question in mind, as if seeking an answer? Often the answer arrives, not linearly, but in symbols, images, even sensations. The problem is that we ignore it, treating it as coincidence when in fact it's an ongoing dialogue. Imagine a person experiencing emotional conflict. They spend the day trying not to think about it, but at night when they fall asleep, their subconscious reorganizes this material. If they sleep unintentionally, their dreams can be confusing, fragmented, and full of noise. Now imagine that same person lying down in silence, breathing deeply, asking for clarity or strength to deal with the situation. The result won't be magical, but the dream may take on more defined contours, bringing symbols that offer unexpected paths. Tesla saw this process as vibrational programming. What you emit when you surrender to sleep is exactly what will be amplified. Magnetism doesn't create, it intensifies. And by intensifying, it transforms what was once a fragment into a narrative. This changes everything, because it means you have an active role, not just a spectator of your night. There are reports of people who, upon adopting this practice, began recording dreams and noticing clear patterns. One woman, after weeks of sleeping with the intention of resolving a personal dilemma, began repeatedly dreaming of broken bridges. Only later did she understand that the symbol was a warning. She was trying to cross paths that no longer existed, insisting on something that should be left behind. By accepting this interpretation, she made life-changing decisions. A man, on the other hand, reported encountering mathematical formulas in dreams that he didn't understand. By recording and reviewing them, he discovered they were solutions to problems he faced in his engineering work. These examples show how the mind, tuned by magnetism, becomes a receiver of coded messages. And the question is, how many times have you received symbols that you ignored? Tesla said that an idea without application is like a spark without a conductor. A dream without recording or reflection is lost like a discharge that illuminates for a second and then disappears. That's why he himself kept notebooks and pads always at hand, jotting down even the strangest fragments. How many times have you woken up with an intense dream, believing you would never forget it, and hours later, no longer remembering even the main images? This forgetfulness isn't a flaw. It's a natural characteristic of the waking mind, which filters out what seems impractical. But by writing, you challenge this filter, transforming frequency into words, vibration into form. This is why so many ancient traditions recommended recording dreams upon waking. The act of writing isn't simply a habit, it's a commitment to the invisible. Think about what your life would be like if you treated each night as a ritual. It's not about creating superstitions, but about organizing your space. Tesla believed that external order reflects internal clarity. A chaotic room full of stimuli makes it difficult to tune in. A clean, quiet, and balanced environment, on the other hand, fosters openness. Today, neuroscientists also confirm that sleep hygiene directly influences dream quality and memory. But Tesla would go further. He would argue that this isn't just about biological health, but also about vibrational preparation. By lying down in a clean space, your mind is better able to capture more subtle frequencies. And by lying down amid chaos, confusion is amplified. This perspective gives you responsibility. What you dream depends largely on what you cultivate before bed. Have you ever noticed how most people fall asleep with screens flashing before their eyes? News, messages, violent images, endless distractions. The mind immerses itself in this noise and carries this material into sleep. And then we wonder why we wake up tired, anxious, or with confused dreams. Tesla would say we're sabotaging the most precious opportunity of the day. He treated the transition between wakefulness and sleep as a sacred space where the quality of the night's experience is decided. Have you ever considered that perhaps your insomnia or nightmares aren't just biological problems, but signs of a vibrational imbalance? Magnetism in this sense is either an ally or an enemy, depending on how you present yourself to it. Imagine that every night you tune into an invisible radio station. What you pick up depends on your frequency. This is why simple practices such as breathing, brief meditation, or even giving thanks before bed have a disproportionate effect. It's not superstition, it's attunement. Giving thanks, for example, reorganizes the emotional field and directs sleep toward symbols of reconciliation. Complaining or harboring resentment, on the contrary, puts the mind in a state of noise, which will only be amplified. Modern studies confirm that emotional quality before sleep influences not only dreams, but also physical health. Research shows that people who cultivate positive intentions at night experience reduced stress, improved immune systems, and greater cognitive clarity upon waking. Now consider this through Tesla's lens. If the Earth's magnetic field amplifies internal states, sleeping in gratitude or fear is not just an individual issue, but a collective one, because by entering the field, your vibration merges with the whole. This means that each night you contribute to the invisible chorus that influences millions of other beings. It's a silent but real responsibility. And here's the provocation. How many times have you let your night be guided by external distractions, missing the chance to engage with the universe? If every sleep is a laboratory, then every wasted night is like an unfulfilled experiment, a contact not made, a lost opportunity. Tesla believed that humanity wastes immeasurable forces simply because it doesn't know how to use them consciously. Magnetism doesn't stop, doesn't wait, doesn't stop acting. It amplifies what it encounters. The question is, what have you offered it? This is where sleep becomes a ritual. It's not just about turning out the lights, but about choosing how to enter the night. Have you ever tried going to bed asking for inspiration? Many artists report that creative ideas emerge in the morning, as if planted overnight. Writers, musicians, painters, inventors, they all speak of the same phenomenon. Tesla was no exception. He said that many of his inventions emerged complete in his mind, not as step-by-step reasoning, but as a sudden vision. This is exactly what happens when the mind tunes in. The invisible translates into image, frequency into form. But this requires preparation. Would you dare to try transforming your night into a ritual of discovery? The final question that echoes in this section is inevitable. How many more times will you treat your dreams as mere illusions, when you can treat them as codes? How many more nights will you let slip away unintentionally, unrecorded, unreflected? Tesla believed that the difference between those who waste the night and those who transform it lies in attitude. And perhaps this is the most important lesson. Magnetism doesn't choose, but you can choose. The choice is between sleeping as one who escapes consciousness or sleeping as one who seeks to participate in the mystery. What you decide before closing your eyes will be exactly what the invisible field will amplify. Now, imagine if you applied this consistently. Instead of confused nights, you'd have clarity. Instead of nightmares, you'd have organized symbols. Instead of waking up empty, you'd wake up inspired. Not because the universe favored you, but because you learned to tune in. This is the practice Tesla left us as a silent legacy, transforming sleep into a conscious ritual. And the question that remains, simple yet profound, is this. When you go to bed tonight, will you treat the night as oblivion or as opportunity? What if the greatest revolution of your life didn't begin at work, nor on a grand trip, nor with a bold new project, but rather in the silence of each night when you close your eyes? Nikola Tesla believed that the future of humanity depended not only on machines, inventions, or the electricity that illuminated the world, but on how each human being learns to relate to the invisible. For him, sleep was never just rest, but a space for dialogue between the individual and the universal. And this dialogue can be wasted or transformed into a key to evolution. Now that you've traveled this entire journey, the question is clear. What will you do with what you've discovered? Tesla used to say that humanity's greatest tragedy is not ignorance, but the refusal to listen to what is already available. The night, with its apparent darkness, is actually the greatest library open before us. Every dream is a page, every symbol is a sentence, every sensation is a code waiting to be deciphered. But how many of these pages have you already missed? How many symbols have been lost because you didn't record, didn't reflect, didn't pay attention? Perhaps thousands. This is the reality for all of us, but it doesn't have to remain this way. Change begins when we decide to treat sleep not as absence, but as presence. It's natural for the question to arise. How to apply all this in practical life? How to transform such profound ideas into concrete actions that truly generate change? A strategic plan doesn't need to be complex. On the contrary, it should be simple, straightforward, and achievable by anyone. Tesla knew that genius lies in simplicity, and that nature's great systems are based on clear laws, not complicated formulas. This is how we need to view sleep, as a simple process that can be reorganized with small choices. The first step is to intention. Never go to sleep automatically. Before closing your eyes, take a conscious pause. Take a few deep breaths. Silence external noises, turn off distractions, close screens. Ask yourself, what do I want to hear tonight? What question do I want to leave for the universe? Don't expect the answer to come clearly and immediately. Remember, the universe speaks in symbols. But without this initial question, without this intention, the night will remain random. Tesla saw intention as frequency. You choose the station before turning on the radio. The second step is the environment. The place where you sleep isn't just physical, it's vibrational. A disorganized room full of stimuli, noise, and artificial light communicates confusion to the body and mind. Clearing the space, reducing noise pollution, and keeping only the essentials is more than aesthetic. It's about attunement. You might even choose to place a symbolic object nearby, a crystal, a magnet, a dream notebook, not out of superstition, but as a physical reminder of your intention. Tesla believed that the environment has a direct effect on what we perceive, and every detail counts. The third step is the conscious magnetization. Try, if you wish, placing a small magnet near your head or under your pillow, not as magic but as a focusing tool. Magnetism, for Tesla, is a bridge, not a creator. It only intensifies what already exists. When you fall asleep in a state of calm, gratitude, or sincere seeking, the magnetic field amplifies this frequency, helping to clarify the symbols that will appear in your dreams. If you fall asleep in fear, irritation, or noise, it will amplify the chaos. The responsibility is yours. Therefore, magnetism is not a talisman, but an ally. The fourth step is there could keep a notebook or app by your bed. When you wake up, write down what you remember, even if it's fragments or disconnected images. Tesla did this constantly. Many of his most revolutionary ideas were born from notes that, at the time, seemed incoherent. Only years later did they make sense. If you don't record, you lose the thread. If you record, you create a map. Over time, symbols begin to repeat themselves. Messages become clearer. Patterns reveal themselves. Without recording, the dialogue with the universe is lost in seconds. The fifth step is their reflective interpretation. Don't read your dreams literally. The unconscious speaks in metaphors. A ladder can be a call to ascension. Water can represent emotions. Fire can indicate purification. Ask yourself, what does this mean to me now? There are no universal manuals because each symbol connects to your personal story. The important thing is not to ignore it. The simple act of reflection creates space for the message to be understood. The sixth step is the action. There's no point in receiving symbols, reflections, or messages if they don't translate into practical change. If the dream indicates that you need to forgive someone, take a step in that direction. If it indicates that a decision needs to be made, face the choice. If it shows a pattern of behavior that is harming you, change it. Tesla said that energy without application dissipates. The same goes for dreams. They aren't entertainment, they are instructions. It's up to you to decide whether to apply them or continue repeating the same cycles. These 6 steps form a complete cycle: intention, environment, magnetization, recording, interpretation, and action. By practicing them consistently, you transform sleep into a ritual of learning and evolution. Don't expect immediate miracles. Tesla reminded us that science requires patience, discipline, and repetition. But the reward comes with time. Greater clarity, more balance, more intuition, more creativity. You may find yourself waking up with answers to questions that previously seemed insoluble, or with a serenity you can't explain. This won't be a coincidence. It will be the result of your own commitment. And here's a key point. This practice transforms not only you, but also the collective field. Every time a person sleeps with intention, gratitude, and openness, their frequency enters the invisible network that connects all of humanity. Likewise, every time someone falls asleep in fear, anger, or confusion, that energy also enters the network. This means that what you do in silence, alone in your room, has an impact beyond yourself. It's an invisible contribution to the planet's vibrational field. Tesla believed that we are cells of a universal mind, and our nights are moments when we connect most directly to it. Can you feel the weight of this responsibility? But can you also perceive the beauty of this opportunity? We are not condemned to chaos. We can learn to sleep as one participating in a ritual, not as one escaping into oblivion. We can transform the night into a space for learning and healing. We can transform dreams into guides and symbols into life tools. This doesn't require great resources, but the courage to look within and the constancy to practice. You might be wondering, is it worth it? Can I really change my life just by changing the way I sleep? The answer lies in your experience. Take the test. Try it for a week. Write down your dreams. Reflect on them. Apply what you can. See what happens. It's not about belief, but about practice. Tesla always reminded us that the laws of the universe don't depend on our acceptance to act. Magnetism is there, whether you recognize it or not. The choice is simply to ignore it or use it. Now that we've reached the end of this journey, I want to invite you to look at this night differently. When you go to bed, remember, it's not just sleep, it's encounter. It's not just rest, it's dialogue. It's not just routine, it's opportunity. Perhaps today, as you close your eyes, you'll receive a symbol, a feeling, or a clarity that can change your life. But this will only be possible if you're willing to listen. If this message touched you, if it awakened something within you, allow this energy to continue circulating. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future reflections. Like this video so it reaches more people, and share your experiences or questions in the comments, even anonymously. Every story, every account, every question strengthens this invisible network of learning and transformation. Your voice matters, your process matters, and together, we can transform the simple act of sleep into one of humanity's greatest forces of awakening. Now the choice is in your hands. Will you sleep as always? Or will you sleep like someone who has finally discovered that each night is a portal waiting to be crossed?